by my two favorite co-hosts of all time, Matthew Spawnhour and Theo Ash. And welcome back to another episode of Stay Hot, presented by our good friends over at Little Caesars Pizza, where Stay Hot, they're staying ready with some hot and ready pizza for you all NFL season long. So why don't you head on over to Little Caesars, get yourself a nice hot and ready pizza. We have quite a bit to talk about today. James Harden to the Clippers. We have to talk about the NFL trade deadline. A lot went down there, and then there's some things that didn't go down that we thought might have. Just kind of a whole lot to discuss today, and we'll try and get through it in as organized of a fashion as we can. But before we get into that, Matt, Theo, how are you guys doing today?
I'm doing well. We're in November.
Getting chilly.
Getting down to the back half of the NFL season. I was going to ask you guys, do you think the trade deadline should be later?
Sure.
I've never put any thought into it, but I don't see how it could be.
Why not?
Bad necessarily.
Maybe a couple weeks later, I could see.
Debating
dialogue about that.
What are the discussions? Like, what are people saying the pros and cons would be?
I think people just think that it's a little bit too early for all the trading to be done. Like, you're locked into your roster.
You're kind of a couple weeks away from like it really being. I think after 10 or 11 would probably be more.
My only concern is like I think that we would see less trades just because like the Chase Young deal might be a rental. You're just renting them for
I guess
less
that's
and
true,
less.
but you could get it done anyway, you know.
Did they push the deadline back when they made the season longer?
That's a good question.
That would be my only.
I don't think that they did.
If you're going to make the season an extra game,
what were week? I thought it was week 6. Honestly, yeah, it was at week.
Oh, they did.
Yeah, I think they did then, right? It used to be.
If they did, then I think it's probably fine.
It's whatever. I don't care.
I don't really care either. I could see pushing it back by 1 week, but it's not bad.
Yeah.
And I wish that they had a little bit more leniency about the deadline. It's tough when it hits exactly 2, and then they're like, no more trades, and it's like not even just one more as like an encore.
What if it's a really fun?
What if it's a really big one, like
that would actually,
or even a really
that
small
would make
one.
It really interesting. Okay, the deadline is at 4 or
Ish.
2 or whatever it was. It's at 4
4
exactly, except one more trade can be made, not by every team, by the entire league. And whoever gets that trade in first, that's the final trade. But you get one more. And if nobody makes it, it gets to the Super Bowl. You need, I need another back. You need to make that trade.
The mechanics of this, we need to spread it out, though, because then it just happens at 4:01. There needs to be a way, like a break glass in case of emergency way to have it so it could happen at week 17. You get one more the rest of the year for
you got to forfeit
everyone,
like a day 3 pick if you need to make like a panic push the button move.
Yes, there should be some sort of you have to give up your firstborn child type mechanic where it's like you can make one more move, but the tax is heavy.
NFL, Roger.
And then people would be like, well, the Vikings, should they press the button? Should they press the big red button to make a move and give up everything, their whole future?
Maybe
your whole future,
the entire draft class button.
You don't get to draft if you do this.
No one would press that button, so it wouldn't be fun. But
no,
it would be fun to speculate.
Why don't they do that?
You could just have it there so the media could have something to talk about.
The media
do us a solid.
I can see it.
Well, I think before we hit on the NFL stuff, the NBA season's been going on. Matt, I'm sure you've been having a blast. Theo, I know you watched the Suns last night, and
unfortunately
didn't have as much of a blast. We do need to talk about James Harden. Matt, how are the Hornets doing? Are they?
Bad. They suck.
I want to ask him. He's our resident Hornets fan. I don't.
They do. They're fine. They don't really have that great of depth, but Miller's been really good. LaMelo has looked really rusty though, so it's kind of hard to judge him until he gets back to his old self.
Yeah, that's
we can't judge him until he looks good, and then.
Well, he's been better than he is now. He's been horrible these last few games. So I have faith that he's not going to be. Maybe people don't believe in his development, but I think he can be better than this for sure.
No doubt. As far as the Harden trade goes, I feel like it's a good move by the Clippers. I mean, the situation that James Harden found himself in made it so I feel like the Clippers were really the only team that could go get him at all, with how he has forced his way out of several other situations, how he clearly was not intent on returning to the 76ers. If you're a team, how do you look at James Harden and say he's going to be on our team by the deadline without causing a fuss, unless you have, the people around that would make him want to stay? I feel like the Clippers have that. I think that he was vocal that that's kind of where he wanted to be. So with them, I think that you could trust him a little bit more. And the fact that there really probably wasn't much of a market for him allows the Clippers to be able to get a guy who is playing at a really high level last regular season for, some picks and some role players. But to me, they kind of solved their biggest issue with a player who is really good last year. And the injury stuff is obviously there, but ignoring all that,
I don't. Team just Mr. Glass.
Sure, it is. Everyone knows it. It's not even interesting to talk about. But like when they're on the court, they should be a pretty good starting lineup. No.
I have mixed feelings about it. I don't hate the trade at all. I mean, my take on it was it's like you got to go down swinging in the Kawhi Paul George era, but like this probably won't change the final outcome of the Clippers. I think there's still a lot of problems. Like Harden is he is a playoff sinker, I'm afraid, and he's getting up there, and you got him for cheap, but you're going to have to pay him big money. And it's fine because you're kind of locked into this era now, but I don't know. They've been really good the first few games, so I don't want to be too much of a hater on them. But defensively, they were not that strong last year. Granted, Paul George and Kawhi missed a bunch of time, and I guess I didn't go look at the difference between the numbers when those two were playing and when those two weren't. But I don't think this helps them defensively. I think their personnel defensively got weaker. You lost Covington. Like go and look at what their lineups are going to be. I think it's more probably negative defenders and positive defenders. And the positive defenders, it's like you're asking a lot of an older Kawhi and a lot of, an older Paul George. Harden is good, and the playoff sinking stuff and the rough games that he has will be mitigated slightly by the fact that he's the third guy probably, or at least there's two other guys there instead of, just one. So the 76ers were leaning on him to create from the perimeter a lot more than the Clippers are going to. But he's maybe not the easiest guy to work into a team like you'd prefer a third guy to be. And although I still think he's pretty good, it just does this push them up to being your healthy favorite or healthy top three? Probably not. And I think that's a problem when you're maybe the most likely contender to get banged up too.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just think it doesn't really negatively impact your future more than it has already been impacted. They're not making another. They gave up
a first,
four role players.
Yeah, four role players, mostly matching salary, and then a first in 2026 that I think is unprotected. I could be wrong, to be completely honest with you, and then a couple of seconds.
Okay,
it wasn't a huge trade package. Yeah. It's fine. It makes them more exciting. It really does. And if you get to the playoffs with the hypothetical healthy Harden, healthy Paul George, healthy Kawhi, I think their odds of going on a run are better now than they were. certainly, but it doesn't push them up to being like a top tier contender, and it doesn't solve the problem of they're probably going to get hurt.
Yeah. I think it's okay though if it doesn't vault them up to being like the title favorites. I think that it makes them an exciting team. I think that there is a potential here for this to be one of the better seasons of LA Clippers basketball in their history. Right now, I mean, they're the most efficient team in basketball.
Yeah, they've been playing fantastic recently. Don't get me wrong.
So you add Harden into that. Like I like the trade for the Clippers, and I don't so much for the 76ers. Like when they traded for Harden, for it to end this way, I don't know how you can say it's anything but bad for them. I mean, the package is probably about as good a package as you can get. I'm sure that they didn't do charity work for the Clippers to turn down a bigger package. So like, good job. You traded
It's a
him.
bad situation, not a bad trade, is how you look at that, in my opinion.
Okay.
Their real decision is: do you take the picks that you have, some that you got from? I mean, they still have, I think, a handful of picks. Do you take those and try to make like a Levine move, or do you say, we're out, we can't get it done, we're going to blow it up? I think, and move Embiid. I think it's most likely that as long as Morey is there, he's probably not looking to blow it up, because I'm not sure how that would affect like his long-term job stability going through an entire rebuild. But I'd wonder if the right call would be to blow it up. I don't know if you're there quite yet, because Maxey's looked quite good. And if you could affordably get Levine, like if that's possible, it'd be pretty strong. Maybe not matching up with the other contenders. Would it be pretty strong? And there's nothing wrong with playing some like competitive in the second round basketball.
Yeah, I don't think the 76ers will see. I mean, the fact that this move didn't work is pretty horrible for them, but it's not like they've been a total disaster this year. They've been one of the better teams of basketball through a very small sample size. So at the end of the day, it just is disappointing that it didn't work out. And I think that Morey as a GM, or really leadership in Philadelphia, deserves to be criticized for how this all played out. But that doesn't mean it's totally over, because, like you said, Maxey is playing quite well. Tobias Harris is playing quite well. Kelly Oubre playing quite well. So they've still got some hope. So I don't think that it's fair to say like, oh, they'll trade Joel Embiid. They probably won't. But I like the Clippers.
I don't know if I'd say they probably won't. I think they're either going to make, I think this offseason, they're either going to make a big move, or Embiid's going to ask out.
In the offseason, yes, but I don't think we'll see any kind of KD move at the deadline.
I'd say probably not. But I couldn't 100% guarantee that's not the case. I think things would have to go pretty bad, or the Sixers would have to be pretty vocally like standing pat. And maybe not bad, but like if the Sixers were floating around like the 6th seed around the deadline, which, right now they're not, but you never know. And if it just feels like it's not going anywhere, I could hypothetically see it, although I agree. I don't expect it. Because I also thought that they'd wait until the offseason to trade KD. Sure. I was confident that was what they were going to do, and nah, they just wanted to go ahead and get that done. Although that's kind of a different situation, but still.
Yeah. So, Theo, you like the Clippers?
I do like the Clippers. I think that Paul George and Kawhi are no joke as a duo. I think Harden I don't think it's going to be so difficult to mix him as a third option. I think that's kind of what he's been over the past couple of years, as someone who isn't necessarily this ball dominant player, but more of a facilitator. And he's older now. He's going to have to do it to almost an entirely new level that we haven't quite seen. But I think he'll do it. I don't think that he's necessarily going to be like ruining anything, because he was a positive force basically everywhere he's been. And what the Sixers needed him to do, at least in the regular season, he did it. Like you said, Matt, like the playoffs have kind of been a different story with him. But I like James Harden. I do. I think that he
I've
gets a
always
little
been a
bit
Harden
overhated.
fan.
So, and Westbrook has looked pretty good since joining the Clippers. It's definitely the best of his post-Thunder stints so far, seemingly. Oh, maybe Washington was. So, you know, you get Paul George with Harden and Russ. I think that you could do a lot of different things. You can hit mid-rangers. You can distribute the ball. You can put pressure on the rim. You know, you can defend with wings, like at a level still probably higher than just about anybody. I don't know. I think that the Clippers, again, they'll probably not be 100% healthy, but their starting lineup is old, but not quite washed to me. It's not like it's just a bunch of washed guys out there, because I think Kawhi and Paul George are still good. Harden is a little washed, but not all the way, and same with Russ. So it's not like it's a total...
I like
Michael
the
Jordan
point of them just being
Wizards
like
situation.
exciting. I like the point of them just being an exciting team, because I feel like part of the battle of being the Clippers is you have to deal with the Lakers are the popular team in your city.
To do with being the Clippers, yeah, real talk.
Real talk.
I understand that from a Hornets fan perspective. I just think sometimes it's good to add in that extra element. There's only so many times you can run it back before it starts to feel like you're just banging your head against a wall. And it was cheap, and I do think it makes the team better. I don't hate the trade. I don't think it really is going to change the outcome at the end of it. And
I don't either.
I think there's still way too many question marks and way too many problems. But they've been very good to start the year. And if they are all hypothetically healthy, I mean, they can compete with just about anybody in the West. So, and it's exciting.
I don't want to play them in the playoffs. We played them, the Suns did, and Kawhi, you know, reminded everybody why he's the best player in the world. Like, he looked absolutely unstoppable, and then of course he got hurt. So, yeah. But like in those moments, it was like, even with KD, even with Booker, and the Clippers were lower seed, you're like, geez, dude, like just Kawhi alone, I don't want to face. And to have that plus Paul George plus Westbrook, who had some big performances in that series, and now Harden, like I could totally see how that could be overwhelming.
Then they got Tucker too, right?
They did get Tucker in the trade as well. So again, Kawhi was hurt in that series. Paul George was hurt in that series. But man, if they were healthy, I have no doubt that the Clippers would have dispatched the Suns. And now they've just got another shot at it, and with even more star power, it'll just come down to getting hot at the right time and staying hot. And
I think I'm interested to see how they all fit together. That's
going to be
Kawhi
playing the 4.
That's going to be very interesting to see how they all fit together. I question that a little bit, but
I think it'll be all right. But let's talk about the NFL.
Let's talk about the NFL, but we'll see.
All right. I think we should start with Josh McDaniels and just like the whole Raiders organization. What is it that they're paying like $80 million out to coaches that aren't on the team?
That's bad.
Josh McDaniels signed a 6-year contract. It's year 2, and he is now gone. Giving the 6-year contract to Josh McDaniels in the first place was something that was obviously not going to work, in my opinion. We talk about how, did Brady carry Belichick? Did Belichick carry Brady? Belichick coached defense. Did Brady carry Josh McDaniels? Yes. Like he's an egomaniac. He got fired instantly in Denver. He went to the Colts and then left them at the altar, and then went to the Raiders, and his tenure was screwed as soon as they signed Jimmy Garoppolo. Like the fact that was their answer post Derek Carr is just a joke, honestly. Through the failed physical.
Derek Carr wasn't the answer. Maybe worse Derek Carr is
Jimmy Garoppolo, after getting replaced by Trey Lance and then getting hurt again, and then literally being at the bottom of his career physically, like could not even pass a physical. And then they just, I guess, there wasn't much news. I don't know what happened. Just like, did he look great and pass the physical, or did he like barely meet thresholds and pass the physical? You know, like you throw him out there, he throws some of the worst picks you've ever seen against the Lions. I don't know how that was ever going to work. And as far as McDaniels goes, it's like, oh, let's bring in Hoyer, who worked with me in New England. Let's bring in Stidham, who worked with me in New England. Let's bring in Jacoby Myers, who worked with me in New England. Yeah. Like, his schemes can be as fine as they could be, you know, like I don't think they'll miss anything about it. I don't think anyone can't replicate what he was doing. I don't think he's the worst play caller ever. Like, he's not totally incompetent. Like, there are answers if you're a pocket passer. Like, there are lots of nice things to look at and read out, and it's all good. But it's like Jimmy Garoppolo is the guy you need. I don't know. And it doesn't matter if you can't manage people inside the building and everybody hates you.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how good your schemes are.
You know, it's tough to judge exactly how that stuff goes because we aren't there. But I think the firing multiple times in under 2 years speaks for itself. No,
probably. And just the general thing with Carr, like what he was, you have to design your offense around the players that you have as well. You can't just have your play. I mean, you can have your playbook and not adjust it and make all the players learn exactly what it is and do exactly what you want. But the best coaches, in my opinion, match their scheme to the strength of the team. And to me, the strengths of the Raiders were the stuff that he should have taken John Gruden's playbook and tried to replicate it as closely as possible, because Carr was playing great with Gruden and they didn't want to fire Gruden. Gruden had to leave. So that's what you should continue to roll with. And they just weren't really able to adjust. And McDaniels was mad as Carr, and Carr was mad at McDaniels, and he leaves with no backup plan. And it's just been a mess.
Yeah. It's just hard to switch quarterbacks, man. It's like, you just can't come in being like, well, I don't like the quarterback. Well, you might not have a lot of choices, you know? It's not easy.
Yeah, they were sitting at 6 or 7 in the draft, and it's like they didn't make a move up there. No one fell except for Levis. Maybe they should have taken him. I personally, based on where I had Levis graded, taking him, they picked Michael Mayer over him in the second round, correct?
It was
that I would not have.
Could have been by 1 pick, maybe.
Like, to me, that's bad management. Like, Levis, I had a high enough grade on that. You should take him there if you don't have a quarterback. But no, it has to be the Patriot.
I thought Levis in the first round would have been perfectly fine.
At the back, I think in the middle or
after Levis. But however, they could have called and traded up. They could have called and traded up to 33 if they had really wanted to, and they felt like you fell.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I feel like there's been a lot of mismanagement at the quarterback position, and I feel like a lot of it has to do with McDaniels' ego. Their interim is hilarious because he was the director of recruiting for Arizona State when we picked up all the violations and the program got gutted.
Man.
I did not expect to hear his name again, much less being an NFL head coach a year after all of that went down.
This is going to be
crazy. It is funny. However, I was looking today. I saw a tweet come up. Arizona State at Cincinnati 2024. It's coming up officially on the schedule.
Hold on.
Where is it?
Is Theo finally
Cincinnati.
Is Theo finally going to come to Ohio?
Maybe I'll have to for that one. That would be pretty fun to see the ASU Cincinnati matchup. That'll be the Stay Hot Super Bowl.
that'll be
the Stay Hot.
That's going to be a bloodbath, man. That's going to be 2 titans of the game going up against each other.
I will say
ASU versus Miami of Ohio matchup. That's the real.
Join the Big 12 or whatever we're in. I don't know. I will say though, Antonio Pierce, the team was way better when we were cheating. We had Johnny Wilson, we had Jaden Daniels, we had Rashad White, we had Chip Trainum.
Well, if you like cheating, I believe there's another college football coach who has just become available for you. So
I believe the Raiders' mantra back when they were good was rule number 1: cheating is encouraged. They kind of had that reputation of kind of a dirty team. So I actually like the fit. He did tear apart ASU's program, but his only mistake was not getting caught, because he did recruit several good players. I wish he could have gotten away with it, but unfortunately,
I would have gotten
he did
away
not.
with it too.
And there are no recruiting violations, I think, in the NFL unless he tries to make a trade after the deadline here, which I don't think you could do very subtly.
If he had to break glass in case of emergency, he could.
Yes. So I don't know. I honestly don't know too much about him as a coach, despite the fact that he was heavily involved at ASU. But he's an interim, and they will win their next game. So,
well, we'll see. We'll see in the Stay Hot locks who ends up.
I will lock the Raiders. I don't care who they're playing. The interim always wins. They're playing the Giants.
Yeah, they are. They're playing the Giants.
Lock it. They're coming out and they're winning.
That might be free. Who's starting at quarterback? O'Connell?
Aiden, and they went with Aiden O'Connell, who is a better option than Garoppolo or Hoyer.
Hoyer's
much
hurt
of
still.
I don't.
Sure.
Yeah, hurt or not,
So,
Garoppolo can't play anymore. I don't know if we'll see him in the league again. Honestly, the performance on Monday was one of the worst that we will see all season, and just given the state of his career.
Now. But still,
well, they named not McDaniels. They named O'Connell the starter. So even if Hoyer and Garoppolo are perfectly healthy, it's going to be O'Connell. And he was a real statue in the pocket and let Khalil Mack sack him 6 times when we saw him before. But I think he's still I wish it was a higher draft pick. I wish it was a rookie with more mobility and just more talent overall than O'Connell that they could turn to in this moment. But turning to any rookie would be, to me, superior to their current veteran starters.
Yeah, Levis would have been a pretty nice fit.
It would have been a really nice fit. Just slide in Levis right now. That would have been a way better idea, I believe.
Imagine
although maybe
Levis
it shouldn't be
goes
too.
Out and throws 4 touchdowns to Devontae Adams instead of D-Hop. I mean,
yeah, we'll see if the Levis hype holds up. He's about to play the Steelers.
Yeah, that's. Ooh. Well, they don't have Minka, and they don't have Cam Hayward. So
it could keep rolling.
Hold on.
Keep rolling.
It could roll for a little while longer. But if we want to talk about some of the trade deadline stuff, move on from the Raiders a little bit. The Bears did make a move, but Washington has kind of started to gut a little bit. Got rid of Chase Young, got rid of Montez Sweat.
First, I want to talk about Washington, just in general, before we talk about.
Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Where they traded them to. Gutting the defensive line. To me, the second round for Montez Sweat, I think, is fine. Yeah. The third for Chase, I start to question why that is worth it. Because who are your edges going to be in the immediate future? Who are these guys?
Well, maybe you're not worried about the immediate future, right now. Then, right?
You
but then
should
maybe
be.
Maybe the question is: does a 3rd round pick move the needle more than Chase Young does?
And not even a 3rd round pick more than Chase Young does. It's they could have gotten a comp pick if they let him walk. So if they would have kept him for the back half of the season, they still would have gotten some compensation. So when we're talking about what they actually got for Chase Young, it just is too minuscule for me to why not just wait it out and franchise tag and trade? I don't know. I just feel like that's not the price I'm selling Chase Young at.
I think that's actually a good question because, why would you? Chase Young's certainly going to get a very big contract, almost certainly going to be worth a 3rd round pick comp wise, possibly not, but 3rd or 4th at worst. So it seems like it would be easier to just hold on instead of, going for that 49ers price tag. The reason why you would prefer to go with the 49ers is because you could go into this offseason and not be barred from spending money and still receive that 3rd round pick. So you see them go and make that trade now instead of, just why not wait until the offseason and just get the comp pick? And if that's really what you want to do and just see how the rest of the season goes, maybe you can franchise tag him and trade him, yada, yada, yada. Maybe because they want to spend money. And they have a ridiculous amount of money to spend next offseason. They have like $90 million in cap space.
To sign who?
The mistake would be okay. So, well, here's as long as they don't do what the Bears did, right? Which is like overpay an edge defender who is worse than Chase Young. That would be the glaring mistake.
What the Bears, but they're going to end up doing what the Bears did. No, like you trade away Chase Young. What edge could you sign in free agency that's better than Chase Young? No one. Marcus Davenport.
There's also the possibility that maybe they just feel like Chase and Sweat aren't worth the contracts that they're about to get. I think there's, maybe they want to take that money and spend it elsewhere, because if you paid those two guys, you'd be paying them probably about combined pushing $50 million.
I get trading one of them. I think that it's the Sweat move. I think is fine for them. If you look at Sweat and you say, look, this guy has a crazy long arm, like he's super long, he's powerful, he can crunch the pocket, he can defend the run, but he just isn't quite that, active hands killer as a pass rusher to justify getting paid like a top guy. Like, we'll move him for a second round pick. That's fine. Chase for a third. It's like, I would want just as much as I got for Sweat for Chase, certainly. But, I guess they did it. They do have a lot of cap space. They need to address the edge position, whether that be in the draft. I guess there are some attractive options potentially hitting free agency, Danielle Hunter being one. We've got Josh Allen perhaps hitting free agency. Brian Burns, I believe, still hasn't signed a contract. So those are maybe guys that you would take over Chase Young.
Maybe they want to take a look in the draft, or maybe.
Draft.
I'm not defending the moves, to be clear. I'm just thinking like, okay, well, why were they doing this? They're not just, this would be a stupid move, I'm going to do this. Like, there's a little bit more thought behind it than that. I'm certain it might just come down to they want to make moves within a vacuum, and they say, we don't think Chase is worth the contract we're going to have to give him, and yeah, we could wait and get the comp pick, but we don't want to be handicapped in that way, so we're going to go ahead and trade him now for the third. And maybe they feel the same way about Sweat, and the fact that it's both of their edge rushers maybe is just something that they don't care about because they're that forward thinking.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that there's an efficiency argument to it, and trading Young is, I get trading Young. I get it. But I would have been hoping for a late first, man. Like, just to trade him for a third, it's hard to call them the winners in anything when it's that low. And I understand why.
I don't disagree.
We don't know what else was on the table. We don't know. Like, obviously, he wasn't garnering that much interest. He's had a ton of injuries over the course of his career. Like, he's probably never would have been worth that. But the argument is it better than doing nothing? And to me, it's just about the same. And the 7th seed in the NFC is really anybody's game. And I probably wouldn't have tried to gut the roster at this point. I think that it could have been done a little bit later. I would have tried to keep the team together and compete this season more than they did.
Your thought is the 7 seed wide open. Selling doesn't really make sense at this point.
Selling to this extent, I mean, obviously it's unlikely, and the team isn't a contender, but just from a source of like, let's give these coaches who we'll see how much job security Rivera has, like, something to work with, and the fans something to cheer about. And like, it's just not totally out of the question to the point where it's like everyone should understand that we're selling Chase Young for anything that we can get. I just don't know if the season was quite at that point for them, at least for my taste. I think that to me, this is tanking, and tanking is not quite where I think they should be. I think it's justifiable in some instances, but for them, it just feels like going out a little sad, or maybe a little early. But I guess they weren't truly contenders, so maybe it's just a feeling.
Yeah.
The facts don't care about your feelings type of thing.
I mean, what are Washington's big needs right now outside
Edge.
of edge? Outside of edge, obviously.
I mean, corner. I mean,
Corner.
they
Yeah.
could use.
Forbes hasn't really worked.
No, he hasn't worked at all. He's been benched. They could use a second linebacker who's a cornerstone. They could use probably a offensive lineman. They could use a quarterback. They could use a tight end. I mean, it's not a lot of.
Sounds.
I mean, Howell hasn't performed too bad this year, I would say. He's had some good performances.
If you had an opportunity to get May or Williams, which I don't think you would have the pick to get that, but if you had enough draft capital to say move up, I don't know if they would be necessarily opposed to it.
Yeah, it's definitely true, and I don't know, but to me, it was just a weak trade. It was just a weak trade, and I don't like the Young trade specifically. I do not like for them. The Sweat trade, I think, is a little bit more understandable, and how Sweat went for more than Young in the first place probably just comes down to health and like incoming contract. Like, I don't think either of them are quite elite edges, and Chase especially might demand that kind of money. So I get him not being as attractive as an option, even though I think he is a little better.
Well, if you feel like he might demand elite money, and he's not that, and he's a half-year rental, and he's injury-prone, I think that starts to get down to it. I think that starts to explain why he went for a third.
Yes, but he is a freak, I guess. I
agree.
We're talking about why it happened, and yes, those are the reasons. But the dude has put up a lot of pressure this year. He's had a bunch of sacks. Like, he's capable of some pretty rare wins, I think, with his size. Like last year going up against Trent Williams, he had a couple really nice reps. And, at his best, there are some things that he is capable of that not many other guys are. Like, in terms of how imposing he is, he looks like Myles Garrett out there from a physicality standpoint. And he has been pretty consistently pushing the pocket this year, pretty consistently registering pressure, pretty consistently getting sacks. He has a big sack radius, so he can convert those pressures into sacks because he could just reach out an arm and grab you and bring you down. He did that to Jalen Hurts earlier this year. I think it's a great trade for the 49ers. Like, he can have all these red flags, but even if you just get him for the back half of this season, I think that's worth a third-round pick for them, because right now it's Nick Bosa, and that other edge spot has really, really been tough for them. And against the Bengals, it was very clear. Like, Bosa was getting so close to the quarterback, like dropping him in his lap, Orlando Brown in Burrow's lap. And Burrow had great pocket presence and was able to get the ball out. But you looked at the other edge spot, there was no action. Like, nothing was happening. No one was winning. So to be able to bring a guy like Chase Young in, I think it's going to do wonders for their pass rush, which is due for some positive regression in the first place. Like, they're 14th in pressure rate right now, and I think 28th in sack rate. Jeez. So even if nothing changed, you probably were going to see more sacks start to come. Now they have a chance to go from like bottom 10 to top 10 in sack rate pretty quickly. I think it's going to look really, really good. And even if they don't retain him, I know they're paying a lot of other stars. They're here to make a run. A third-round pick has a really low hit rate. Like, Chase Young ups their ceiling this year, and to me, a third-round pick is worth that. That's not a franchise cornerstone.
Yeah, the Niners absolutely needed to add, just a little bit more juice. They're always so close. I feel like they're always so close to getting to the Super Bowl or winning the Super Bowl. They can never quite close out, and it's always like last year they just didn't quite have well, first of all, their quarterback was injured, and they didn't have like another great interior defensive lineman. They were getting bullied by the Eagles on the inside. Kinlaw. So then, Kinlaw. So then they went out and got Hargrave, and now they're a little weak on the edge, and they got exposed against the Bengals. And it's like, okay, well, now we'll bring in let's bring in Chase Young and see if we can just kind of fully flesh out this defensive line. I mean, that's basically what the Browns did, right?
And more importantly, it's what the Rams did. It's what the Rams did. And they won a Super Bowl, and it's a copycat league. And you play to win the game, and the most talented roster gives you the best chance. So if you can get Von Miller for a second, do it. If you can get a good player for a third, do it. You need to be able to draft and develop. But it's not all about that. The Packers tried to draft and develop for a long time.
You need to be able to draft and develop. You need to be able to draft and develop your core guys. But like every once in a while, you're going to have to make that trade. But like you can't like trade and sign for everyone.
Smart free agent signings and smart trades are what puts you over the top, in my opinion. I feel like every Super Bowl champion, I feel like free agency is the least efficient way to get players because it's someone that no one else wants. It's someone that is demanding a ton of money. So it's like there's a lot of landmines in free agency, but I feel like every Super Bowl champion makes a couple of those impact moves where they find value, where they bring someone in who overperforms, where they're able to get someone for cheap because they're a contender and no one else wants to give draft picks away. Like you got to make a couple of those moves. And this is because of everything that is wrong with Chase Young and the 49ers were just willing to give him away. Like the 49ers, I think, benefited greatly because he just needs to stay healthy, not for the length of his career, but just for the length of the back half of the season. So
we need
and what do the 49ers care about trading for injury prone players?
So true.
They don't.
They do not care.
That's probably why they were the ones who end up willing to pay the most, I'd guess. I also think that what it came down to is like 14th in pressure rate for this 49ers team. It's a disappointment. It's supposed to be way better than that. It's supposed to, and I think they were sitting there like, man, it's got to be, top 10, top 5 area. This should have been better. We know what the problem is. We're going to go out and address that because we can't be sinking all of these assets into the pass rush for it to be league average and 28th in sack rate.
Yeah.
Really well, low. That's not good. That's not acceptable.
14th in pressure rate.
If it takes one more third to push them over the edge, absolutely you go for it. I don't disagree.
Yeah, they're missing D'Amico Ryans, I think. I think that D'Amico, you look at where the Texans are in these pressure rates, and the Texans actually had a really high pressure rate last year. So they had maybe more pieces than people gave them credit for in terms of building that. But Steve Wilkes just hasn't been able to design the matchups that you'd like. I wish that Bosa had a little bit more versatility, and this isn't really a Wilkes thing because this was happening last year. You see all these other pass rushers line up over the center, and then you get into kind of a wide front, and they end up one-on-one with the center. You never see Bosa doing anything like that. I wish that you would start to see him a bit more over guards, a bit more over centers. Like that's just ideas, move him around the formation instead of just left to right. And D'Amico was able to not do that. But, when you're not having that success, like that seems like a pretty easy way to get a pressure is like put Nick Bosa over a guard and see what happens. Like it works for Aiden Hutchinson. It works for Myles Garrett. Yeah, it works for a lot of
I'm really that 14th in pressure rate really surprises me a little bit considering they've played Pittsburgh, they've played the Giants, they've played the Cardinals, they've played the Browns. I mean, these are quarterbacks that aren't exactly the most.
One Daniel Jones game should get you out of that bottom 5 in sack rate, no matter what.
That's what I'm saying, man. Like, or one Kenny Pickett alone should have been enough. Like,
it just hasn't been a great year for them.
That wasn't a game that Jones missed, was it?
Versus the 49ers? No, that was week 3 of the season. That was he played in that.
Yeah, I mean they've also played the Rams, and Stafford is a great pocket presence.
Their line isn't great either, though. It's definitely been a huge disappointment
against those guys.
And Wilkes has just not been able to maximize everybody quite like D'Amico was. Just again, I couldn't tell you exactly what it was. It's just D'Amico. You see D'Amico in Houston. The pass rush paths that he designs are crazy. Like they're crazier than they were in San Francisco. He'll loop, he'll stunt, get 3 people involved, like really wide across the line, and it's just really buttoned up. And you look at San Francisco, and it just doesn't look like that. Like they just don't look, when they do stunt, it's just not timed as beautifully, and it's just not as clean, and guys aren't winning as much. And it's been a rough go of it for Wilkes. And if he can't get it done with this group, he'll probably be a 1-year DC. No.
Likely.
Possibly.
Likely. But if we want to talk about the other edge in this trade of Washington edge defenders, Montez Sweat to the Bears, they needed an edge defender so bad.
Yeah. The only question is, did they need one right now? Like, does it make sense for them to be buyers at the deadline and give up a second instead of exploring free agency?
Maybe not, but you also have to think, if your question was, well, who are the Commanders going to get at edge this offseason? If the Bears were to let Montez Sweat pass by, then who are they going to get? So if you know that Sweat's available and you know the Commanders are willing to trade him, if you don't get him, someone else probably will.
And then it's just, is that okay if somebody else gets him for a second?
Maybe. Do you think you're getting like someone better than Montez Sweat in the second round of this year's draft? I don't know.
Probably not. Montez Sweat is pretty good. Montez Sweat is he is also capable of some really high quality wins, and he's really tough. His length makes him really, really tough to deal with, and that is when you watch him, like, that is how he wins. Like long arm,
yeah.
bull rush, long arm, you know?
Yeah.
But guys like that aren't top edges in the league, you know? Like you need a blend of a lot of different things, and that's what makes you elite. And when you pay him what they're going to pay him and give a second round pick, that kind of is elite compensation for a guy who's not quite there. So it's not an efficient move, but you do have to bolster the pass rush somehow. And the Bears know more about
tax right now. Bears tax.
The Bears know more about the second round edge prospects than I do.
Yes.
And yeah, it is kind of a Bears tax where, like, if your franchise is garbage, you do kind of have to overpay for competency. And then once you're competent, you can start making normal deals.
Yep.
Like you can see it. So I don't hate it for them by any stretch. But to part with a high draft pick at this point, it's gross. It's
I mean,
really
they still have
feeling.
2 firsts. They could trade back out of one of those and probably get a second back.
You're right. They look at their draft picks and they think we have plenty even if we give one away.
Yeah.
So I don't hate it for them. But it's not a super efficient move, and the fact that they kind of have to resort to this because it's not like they're contenders and they're like, we have picks, we can give one away and compete. It's we suck. This unit of our team sucks especially. There are no good options to solve it, so we have to overpay. So it's like, okay, like I get it. Like, yeah, that might be true. You might be looking at the reality of the situation and biting the bullet and doing what you can, and that's good. But the fact that you're in that situation is like, Ryan Poles, what are we doing? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to be in that kind of a situation. But I mean, the Jags did the same thing, and you know, look where they are now, only a couple years later. After everyone was like, "Oh my God, this Christian Kirk deal is so awful," but like,
I think that's a little bit different though. No,
I mean, a little.
They didn't give up a pick for him, but they did overpay. And I guess to Poles' credit, when you look back at the edge deals that happened last offseason, none of them are good deals right now. I guess Arden Key is a good deal, but if they would have brought in Draymond Jones or Zach Allen, like the highest paid edges last year, like that wouldn't have been good, I guess. Arden Key would have been a nice little signing to stabilize things. They still should have done something, but
yeah,
I don't know. I think Sweat's a pretty good player. I think he's a really, really, really good player. You we talk about what is an edge one, and I feel like we always come up with like 10 names that are viable edge ones. Like we sit here and we're like, Brian Burns, is he an edge one? Maybe not by the high standards, but there's 32 edge ones in the NFL. I think Montez Sweat falls somewhere within that top 32 range for sure. I think he's a pretty good player. I expect him to be pretty good for the length of his contract. He's pretty healthy. Are you going to get the greatest deal for him ever? Nope, because you're going to have to pay him his value, his face value in free agency this offseason, and you gave up draft assets. But at the end of the day, is this going to be some like monumental loss for them? Probably not.
Right.
It's certainly a better deal than the Claypool deal at the time.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
yeah, it's definitely better than the Claypool deal was. The Claypool deal, I mean, with the way the Steelers develop wide receivers, like they could find a Chase Claypool level producer in round 7, like they were just never going to win that one. We'll see with this one, though. Montez Sweat, they asked him if he was going to sign an extension, and he said, I don't know. I haven't made up my mind yet. I guess you could tag him. They got to rotate him, though. And if he's like not willing to give him a discount, like it's going to be a lot of resources. It's going to be a lot of money and picks.
The Montez Sweat deal, we really should look back on that and think about how ridiculous it is. Not the Montez Sweat, I'm sorry, the Chase Claypool deal. You give up a premium second-round draft pick in almost any other trade, that means you're getting back like an awesome player who like the other team just doesn't want to pay. Like Claypool, even that year, was on pace for like 600 yards. Think about what Ridley went for,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's no other trade like it at all, pretty much.
That was really bad.
That was quite bad. That's
I
kind
know
of
that
a
might seem like
that's kind of a
hindsight 2020,
counterintuitive, though, like an awesome player that teams don't want to pay. That's always that's why free agency is.
Well,
It's like
AJ
they can't
Brown
be
was
that
awesome.
awesome.
AJ Brown was an awesome player. That
You're right.
The Titans
You're right.
didn't want to
AJ
pay.
Brown was such a dumb trade by the Titans.
AJ Brown was an awesome player. Yeah.
Montez Sweat is
Sometimes
pretty good. He's a pretty good.
Make Little Caesars the official pizza sponsor of the NFL part of your game day. Order online during our Pizza pregame 1 hour before and 3 hours after NFL kickoffs, plus all day Sunday. And get ready for some football and some fun. Choose your favorite Little Caesars pizza or pick the toppings you crave. Either way, you win. And speaking of winning, everyone scores with convenient delivery or our in-store pizza portal pickup. So grab some friends and enjoy a few slices during the game.
Good players that get traded do exist. One player I think is a good player that got traded was Leonard Williams, who I think is just as good as maybe not just as good, but he's on the level of Montez Sweat and Chase Young, I think, as an impact guy. Leonard Williams to the Seahawks is a second-round deal I like more, because I think the Seahawks can really contend. I think they looked at their draft capital. They saw they had some extra because of, I think, the Russ trade. When I looked at it, the Saints, it seemed like it came from the Saints, but I don't know where that would have been from. Maybe did Will Lutz get traded for that pick eventually? And I don't know. I don't know who has it now or where it came from, but they had an extra third-round pick. And so when you've got something like that and Uchenna Nwosu is hurt, I respect bringing in Leonard Williams. I think that Williams is a really good finesse defensive tackle. Like his pass rush moves are pretty top notch in terms of how difficult it is to get hands on him at all. Like you jump set him, even if you hit his chest, he grabs your wrists and lifts your arms up like every time. It's awesome. And his arms are so long that he can outreach you. So it's kind of hard to even get to that point. So he's a difficult guy to deal with because he's just tough to contain, because he's tough to lock up. That element of power, that element of like explosiveness at this point for him, or really over the course of his career, he didn't quite live up to where he was maybe drafted. But he's not that like a power rusher. He's more of a finesse guy, but he's a good run defender. Like he could disengage. He's got good balance, like against double teams. He plays up a little high, so you can move him around. But there are times where you push him and he kind of bends and then pops back up and makes a tackle. So I think that Leonard Williams is going to be a big impact player in the center of that defensive line. Now, second round pick is for someone who's not like super elite, like
it's pretty premium compensation. It is.
Yeah, it's not nothing. And so good on the Giants for doing it, but it's hard to say the Giants won a trade when the Giants are falling way short of expectations and have to have a fire sale, and the other team kind of could acquire a good player. Like, to me, like the winner kind of seems like the buyer there, although in an efficiency standpoint, maybe that's not quite the case, but I get it for the Seahawks. I respect that they're in on this team. It's good.
And their run defense has already been pretty good this year.
They have a top 10 defense. They have a top 10 offense.
Surprised, man.
Yeah, they switched up some of their technique stuff. They're not asking so much of like light boxes or certain techniques that makes it easier to get washed down, and that more aggressive style of play has paid dividends, and everyone seems to be hitting for them. Like Tariq Woolen is a hit, Witherspoon's a hit, Mafe was a hit, Brooks is a hit. They're just a really talented defense. Right? And Jamal Adams is good. They got Quandre.
Yeah.
Like
they
there's
brought
no
Wagner
reason.
back, and I think having Wagner back in that box helps out a lot, because now you can move Brooks around a lot, and you can move Jamal, and you don't have to run these super light boxes where you're asking both of those guys to do everything all at once. You can kind of just let Wagner sit in the middle and clog up those A gaps, and then you can they pass rush Jordan Brooks. You can do that. You can fly down with Adams in kind of any situation. He knocked the ball out of the air with his helmet, man.
I mean, Brooks is such a freak. You can kind of ask him to do whatever. You can kind of cover for Bobby's lack of athleticism with Brooks, and yeah, they're just a really versatile team. Even when Adams goes down, if he goes down, you can put you can put Witherspoon in the slot, and he's amazing in the slot. And they've got good depth at outside corner with Trey Brown and Michael Jackson and these guys. So I think they've got a real shot to be the best defense in the league this year. I really do. The Browns are a tough test. The Browns are pretty tough to catch. Maybe the best defense in the NFC. How about that? They're pretty close already.
Yeah, I mean, it's what, them?
It's the 49ers are going
49ers. For it. Yeah, the 49ers are definitely there. Dallas, but without Trevor Diggs.
Although Deron Bland, he had potential. When I was watching the Cowboys after Diggs' initial injury, it's like Bland isn't always where he's supposed to be, but at least they have a guy with some pretty crazy movement skills and had made some really elite plays last year. First game was a disaster for Bland. Then he gets a pick. Now he looks like Diggs. It's like a pick six every week. So with Bland he could really save their season. But I just think that the Seahawks are getting kind of close to that tier one in the NFC. I really do. I think you start to put together an offense and defense combined.
They need to get healthy on their offensive line. Yeah. I'm just
their line.
that is.
And Geno needs to play a bit better. I feel like Geno isn't quite where he was at last year. Although some people think he sucks, I don't think that that's true at all.
No, he doesn't suck. But their offensive line could really kill their season. Like, they're not great as is. If they don't have Cross and Lucas, it's just
Cross has been out there though. It's getting a little bit more healthy.
They're getting back into shape, but
it's not like they have guys out for the whole season. So hypothetically, they could be good come playoffs. But yeah, I think that they could beat anybody. I think going into Seattle is going to be a really tough ask. Or even beating them as road warriors. Like, Lumen is loud as hell, but like they're dangerous anywhere.
Yeah, they're a good team. They're real dangerous right now. Detroit, Philly, and San Francisco.
I think they beat Detroit. I think they could beat Detroit again.
Yeah.
I would give them the edge over Detroit. I also think I like them a little bit more than Dallas, but we'll see. Dallas seemed to figure some things out on offense this week. Some of my worst fears with McCarthy were coming true, that he saw all the picks last year and just was like, Dak, let's be dink and dunk. But against the Rams, that wasn't as true. And their defense.
No, he's had some games where he's really taken over.
Dak is good. Dak is really, really good. He's better than Geno. And Micah is really, like, their pass rush could wreck a game maybe more than any individual unit in Seattle could. So I would love to see a Seahawks versus Dallas game. I think that would be fire.
Seattle gets their offensive line fully healthy, and they get Nwosu back.
Nwosu's not coming back.
Is he done?
Season. Yeah, that's why.
What was his injury?
I think a pec.
Oh, so this is like the TJ Watt injury. Okay, I didn't realize he was out for the year. That's tough.
Trying to think of it in AFC North terms. Explain it in NBA terms. Explain it in NFL terms.
Explain it in AFC North terms.
They also signed Frank Clark, which, come the postseason, who knows with Frank Clark,
Hey,
that guy averages probably like 5 sacks a game in the postseason from what it feels like. I feel like every Chiefs playoff run has heavily involved Frank Clark. But
it did.
Yeah, he's legit. So Seahawks. Yeah, I like the Seahawks a lot. And then this one happened a little bit earlier, but Kevin Byard to the Eagles, we never really talked about, but it was definitely their biggest weakness, was safety this year.
Yeah, they watched Edmonds give up about 100 yards in that Miami game, and we're like,
never
grab Byard.
Yeah. I mean, necessary. Byard's still a strong player. You didn't give up a lot to get him. I'm down for it. I don't know if there's the world to say about it other than he's a pretty reliable safety down there.
In both aspects. Like
and
he's like the epitome of solid right now.
Yeah, he's incredibly. That's what I'm saying. It's like he's incredibly solid. You didn't give up a ton to get him. You're in compete now mode.
Yeah.
I think Eagles fans have grown to expect the Howie Roseman day 3 pick for a guy who helps us right now move. So if it hadn't come, I'm sure there would have been, much upheaval, I would say. So I thought it was a good move. I thought it was a solid move.
The Eagles have to have the Eagles have to have one of the most solid front offices in all of football.
Considering that they're one of the best teams, I would agree.
They have 2 Super Bowls and 2 different coaches. There's just no one who looks under every stone like they do. They just grind, and I don't really think they think team chemistry is real. Like, they're not like, well, we can't possibly we just paid Edmonds. We can't possibly give up on him this soon. They're like, yeah, we can give up on them this soon. Get out of here. We're putting in Byard.
I agree. That's the thing that I really like about them, is that they're very quick to address problems.
Mm-hmm.
That's I think a move that a lot of front offices. Well, Edmonds is here. We're not. Let's wait it out. Like, let's not. There's probably too many people who think, well, the solution's on the roster. The solution's on the roster, and sometimes it's not, and it's okay to accept that. And when you're contending in the NFL like the Eagles are, your window is probably never as big as it seems, bar a few dynasties. So that waiting around and seeing what the roster can do and deferring to the offseason can cost you.
Yeah, the day that they make a trade, maybe like the Brian Burns trade or potential trade with the Rams, where they just get a little bit too, like, their eyes get maybe a little bit too big, and they're like, oh, we need to address this, desperately need to address this. This isn't working. We're not going to be patient with it. And then they bring in like a bad player or overpay or a bad contract in the middle of the season, or the time
what
where
is an
they
example of that? I don't disagree with you, but I'm thinking, okay, of all like the aggressive moves that have sort of had like the aggressive 1 year rental moves. If as long as you're actually contending, it almost always feels like those grade out as like, yes, sir, good job, nice. Even if it
when you're
doesn't end in a
contending, it's
Super
hard to
Bowl.
do wrong. Is the thing is like if you're all good and I got good coaches and players, like it's easy to make good. It's just easy to make good moves. I feel like instead of taking yourself out of a hole. So like when you're a contender, it's like, yeah, you can kind of
like think about it. Like the McCaffrey trade, for example, has worked out great. It doesn't really matter if they win a Super Bowl or not. Nobody's going to look back. Well, it does, but like nobody's going to look back on that trade if they don't win a Super Bowl and be like, yeah, that was stupid. You know, the AJ Brown trade worked. Why can't I think of his name? Safety with Detroit now, sort of nickel corner.
Gardner Johnson.
Yeah, Gardner Johnson. I mean, that they didn't win a Super Bowl off that, but that was widely considered a good trade. Trades like that always seem to end, you know, with the look back on it being very positive, even if the overall team result isn't amazing or anything, or isn't a Super Bowl, I should say.
Yeah, Gardner Johnson. I mean, is Gardner Johnson out? He only played 2 games this year.
Yeah,
and he got hurt, but he was good in those 2 games. So
yeah,
I feel like it's just when you're a contender, you like everything you do kind of works. I feel like, and maybe at some point it won't. I'm trying to think of examples where like
a team gives up a third or a fourth or like a second or like something like that.
Hawkinson is an example too.
Hawkinson's a great example.
Yeah.
Like, what are the examples of those trades like not working out, I guess? You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like when the Eagles got Gardner Johnson, I meant not the Lions.
Oh, yes. That makes way more sense. Yeah, I don't.
I'm sure
nothing
there are, like I'm
immediate.
positive, but it seemed like for the most part those work out pretty good. Maybe that's because once you're a contender, like you've already done a good enough job, like getting the talent for cheap and getting the value like you need to compete in the NFL. Because you obviously can't just build a roster trading picks for players you have to pay. You run out of ammo pretty quickly. But maybe that's once you've already done it, you've already won. Hey, great.
I think really those trades sometimes get won before they even happen, and just kind of the nature of how it goes. Like people always talk about winners and losers at the trade deadline. I don't really love to look at it that way, although you who won a trade, who lost a trade. There's kind of just buyers and sellers. If you're a seller, you've kind of already lost. Because people...
I agree. Like many NBA trades are the same way. You ever see an NBA trade where like you end up getting 1 first back for James Harden? It's because you've gotten yourself into that situation, most likely.
Right. Like, can we say that Washington won the Montez Sweat trade? Like they had a really good defensive line, but it wasn't worth anything because the rest of the roster was so bad. So you got to move on.
And it's like you can't sink.
And it's like, oh,
what would have been like $100 million into your defense? It's like you just can't afford that, you know, a year. It's like, well, we're not nearly good enough to attempt that.
Mm-hmm. And I just feel like a lot of those trades just get won before, like the Titans and the Eagles. Like, how can the Titans fleece the Eagles? There's just no possible way that it happens. With the Titans, it's okay. Derrick Henry, his contract is up. Tannehill's contract is up. Byard's contract is up. And it's like, are these guys future dudes? Our future looks bleak. Like we don't want these guys as a part of it. Like they don't move the needle. So we either lose them for nothing or something. And it's not that they're bad players. It's just that they aren't part of the future plans. And
then
one team
the only teams that are really looking at them are teams that aren't as concerned with their future plans.
Right. It doesn't matter.
So it's like there's less people bidding on those guys. And then it's
unless
also,
the Bears
the season.
Apparently.
That's true.
Except for the Bears, apparently.
That's true.
Yeah, like people always wonder, like, how do the Eagles and the 49ers fleece these guys? Okay, I'm a Packer fan. You think the Packers are looking to give up second-round picks right now? No. So that takes...
Right.
Do you think... How many teams are looking to give up second-round picks? Like, the Bengals probably should, but they're historically a pretty cheap franchise, and they've got people to pay.
I thought of the example. Stephon Gilmore to the Panthers.
They immediately like he was great, but he walks after 1 year, and they maybe won 2 games after he came, and it was just stupid. It was just a waste of everybody's time.
They weren't contenders when he got brought in.
No, and the Panthers have often made these type of moves when they're not contenders.
Oh man.
So that's, I guess, the problem with the Bears. But yeah, when you're a contender, you kind of can run wild at the deadline because only about a fifth of the league is probably looking to buy, and there's a ton of teams looking to sell. So I feel like it's going forward, the trade deadline has been or in the past, the trade deadline has been kind of boring. I feel like post Rams, like there's no reason why contenders shouldn't really ruin all the parity in the league. Like I wonder if that'll be a dialogue maybe next deadline. It's like, oh
yeah,
contenders get too strong after the deadline. But really, like at this point, the contenders are still the contenders. They're just trying to build.
They're trying to separate themselves from the other contenders.
Right. And then they're all do it. Better. And then if they all do it, and like the Eagles and the 49ers both add an impact guy,
right.
Then I guess the parity is basically the exact same as it was before. Yeah. So
it'll just make for a great NFC Championship game.
But if you're a contender, you should be making these trades because they are hard to lose, and it is a really good opportunity. If you're the Bengals, if you are a team that kind of stood pat, like I don't really get it so much because I think that it's, I guess for the Dolphins, like they kind of were aggressive this offseason, so there's not a ton of moves left to make. But I like buying. I like buying at the deadline. I think that teams that buy are often winners, even if like, the draft pick. It's like, your window's kind of now. Like draft picks don't have the highest hit rate. Right.
It's like the Niners, they went in when they brought in Trey Lance, and when that ended up not working out, we ended up realizing that the problem was that they tried to take a quarterback that is a project and get him ready to win a Super Bowl right now. And that just wasn't going to work. I mean, it didn't help that he got injured, but like you're just not going to be able to transform a project guy into a ready to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah,
guy rookies in 1 year.
If your window is now, a rookie can't really help you, and if your window is especially a second or a third round rookie. I mean, Trey Lance, you'd hope that you could help a little bit more than he did, but
right, yeah.
Yeah, I like buying at the deadline is all I'll say. So I think the winners to me are primarily the Niners, primarily the Seahawks, like teams that you're watching right now and excited to watch. Because right now, as a Giants fan, I mean, are you really tuning in? It's hard to feel like a winner, even though you got good compensation. So
right, exactly.
But there's nothing wrong with getting compensation either. I'm sure Giants fans are hyped that they'll have an extra second, and that player will get has their chance to be quite good still. So
right,
it's a win-win at least.
Nick Chubb was a second round pick. Maybe you'll find.
Yeah. So
maybe you'll find a guy there. But
that was a good win-win trade, I guess.
Those are the main, the big blockbuster quote unquote trades, if you will. Then there is, the Vikings. They don't have Kirk Cousins anymore. Really tough because they were starting to really look like a pretty good team. And we're talking about the 7 seed wide
Super
open.
Tough.
But they got Josh Dobbs, who hasn't been the worst guy.
He's been pretty bad. He wasn't the worst at the beginning, and then I feel like everyone has kind of been like, okay, Dobbs,
he's not
decent.
Yes, and then he's not the worst, and it's like the Cardinals are the feisty one and the feisty team
we kind of have
the worst record in the NFL.
Dobbs, after the Dallas game, has put up 16. The offense is at 16, 29, 10, and 24 points. He has fumbled in each of those games.
Ugh.
He has thrown 5 interceptions, so that's 10 turnovers in 5 games, along with 12 sacks. And that's really not what you want from a backup quarterback. With a backup quarterback, the only chance that you've got to win, because they're not really creating big plays, is at least have us win the turnover margin.
Yeah.
And Dobbs has not really been able to accomplish that. And
yeah, but are the
they're on a 5-game
Cardinals? I don't think the
losing
Cardinals are
skid.
were playing the same way you would expect. Like they're not. You would expect a backup quarterback on a contending team to just win the turnover margin. You're just like, just keep us out of trouble until our guy gets back. But in Dobbs,
Dobbs has a guy coming back.
Well, yeah, but the Cardinals aren't going to be like a contender when Kyler comes back. I don't know. I think I feel like the roster is bad enough that it is kind of just like, let's just see what we can muster together. And if we can pull out a couple of games, just like playing some high flying.
If you're going to be doing that, like at least hit the big plays. Then Dobbs hasn't been like, his deep accuracy has been awful. So it's like you're turning the ball over and not giving us anything, but you just
do they
suck.
exactly have the receivers to convert on those downfield?
I think so. I don't think that their receivers are bad. Like
they're not
comparatively,
bad, but it's like it's
they
Hollywood
got Marquise
Brown,
Michael Wilson, who's a decent rookie, Rondale Moore, Ertz and Trey McBride. Like it's not the worst group of weapons
but
ever
who is the
Plus, when guys are open and you miss them, they're missed no matter who they are. And that's what Dobbs has been doing. So Dobbs to me, like people have kind of been like not paying attention. I don't think that he's good. I don't think that he's like one of the best backups in the whole entire league. Like he could be a low end starter. Like no, he could not.
I am surprised that they didn't. I mean, maybe they did make a call at it, but Brissett. Like
I just don't think you can move Brissett out of Washington. Like
maybe you can. Maybe Brissett's just like not available.
Well, other teams don't want to move their backups because what if their starter gets hurt?
Yeah.
And Washington doesn't have a third quarterback on the roster. When Rodgers first went down, I said like go and call about Brissett, and like there's just been no mention of like Brissett trades or like
I feel like there's been a lot of teams that are like, man, we could really use Brissett right now, and like there's been ample opportunity to make a call on him. I'm sure it's just been like the answer's just been no.
There are a lot of bad quarterbacks starting in the league right now. The amount of no names that we've seen play last week and now it's been to me like especially a bad year.
Yeah. So if Brissett, the fact that Brissett hasn't been moved probably just means that Washington is unwilling. So then is Dobbs the best available? Is Dobbs the best available?
Maybe.
For that?
I mean, you also have to consider
he's not good though. Go ahead, Matt.
You also have to consider the fact that what if something happens to Jaren Hall? Mullins and Cousins are on the IR. Like they just need another quarterback. Like you can't roll into game day with one. What'd they do? Go from a 6th to a 7th?
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah.
I get it. I don't think it's a bad move for the Vikings. I just want to make it
games.
very clear. Like, I feel like Dobbs has a really high approval rating among NFL fans right now. Like, he could be a starter.
All about expectations. All about expectations, man. You can do whatever you want when you're on a bad team, man.
Yeah.
And nobody's checking enough to give people only will hear about the good. This is particularly true with young players on bad basketball teams. Mm-hmm. No one cares about your bad nights if you're on the Wizards, Yeah.
And
it's
with
kind
Dobbs,
of like
there was a rushing. He's a good rusher. Like he had some pretty crazy runs this year. So when those get posted and nothing else does, it's like, oh, Dobbs. Then there's Jaren Hall, who is their starter. Hall has hopefully the opposite of Dobbs, where he's not going to turn the football over because his interception rate in college was like really, 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 really low. I think he only threw 11 in 700 career attempts or something like that. He never threw interceptions. Yeah. So
that's like Rodgers level.
I know. He really, really never threw picks. My problem when I turned on the Jaren Hall film was that the BYU offensive line is just too good. Same thing with Zach Wilson. It's just you just get all day back there. And I'm like, is this guy have good footwork? Like, I don't really think so. And he's just kind of getting away with it. Like, is this guy really like have perfect timing? Like, no. Does this guy have a big arm? Like, no. He can run. He's shifty. He's an athlete. Like, he can run around, but he's not like a powerful runner. Like he's more shifty. He's not like a dominant.
Are all BYU
threat.
quarterbacks just the same guy? Is this
Zach had a bigger arm than Zach. To me, was a better prospect than Jaren Hall, and
okay.
that
well,
shouldn't
I'm
be
sure
too
that's
shocking
not saying.
considering.
I'm sure that's not saying much considering. Yeah,
second overall pick, but you look at what Zach has been in the league, and like you don't want worse than Zach Wilson level play, and I think that's what they could get with Jaren Hall.
But I mean, if Jaren Hall's been sitting behind Kirk Cousins for this,
for what? For 2 months?
Not 2 months. What he would have been drafted in April.
Oh.
So we got like 6 months. We've got 6 months.
But he got to talk to him in training camp, I think.
Jordan Love got to talk to Aaron Rodgers for years, and look
4 years.
What did he learn, man? I guess he looks like him when he releases the ball sometimes. But I don't know if he can avoid the picks. I think the Vikings still have a shot, just because I think that their defense is annoying to play at least, and can actively wreck the game at best. So it's a good defense, and obviously the weapons are there. If they can win the turnover margin, if the defense just is wreaking havoc, and Bynum has been a beast, and if they can get 2 picks a game and Hall just doesn't throw any and checks it down to Jefferson and Hawkinson all day, and it's like all of a sudden the Vikings are winning games with a backup. Like we saw it in 2017. Case Keenum came in with Diggs and Thielen and a good defense, and they won a ton of games. So I don't think it's totally out of the question that they're like good, or at least in these games the way they've looked these past couple of weeks, if they can like not fumble as much. But without a consistent running game and without a quarterback, it's certainly an uphill battle. I don't think the season is quite over, but it's really on the ropes. It wouldn't surprise me if we saw some Nick Mullins snaps. That was my main takeaway from watching Dobbs and Hall. It's like neither of these guys are very good, so maybe it'll be Mullins after all.
Yeah, it'll be tough. Maybe that's a team where maybe
what? There's no answers.
You're right. Yeah, maybe
this is
a Josh
you can try to
trade.
You can try to talk yourself into something.
They needed another quarterback who was playable, and they got one.
Right.
We'll see what
bring back Keenan.
This is a team where maybe selling at the deadline would have made sense.
For Hunter,
I think that's a pretty big ask for them to go from 4-4 to shit. We need to sell right away.
Yeah, but like
a first for Hunter.
I don't know. At some point, you're gonna need, and maybe you can live on Kirk Cousins for when is his contract up?
It's over. He's never unless they re-sign him. He's never playing for the Vikings again.
So it's like you could use a high draft pick.
not everybody.
But they were looking so good though. Like let's think about next year. Okay, let's say they suck this year. They suck, but they end the year 5 wins, 6 wins. They win 1 or 2 more. Mm-hmm. You could bring back Cousins. How would you feel about the Vikings then?
You'd feel all
right about him. You'd feel all right about him.
Right. You get healthy Jefferson. You have Cousins back.
Like they're not in just a 1-year window here. I feel like so if you're gonna sell, like you've got a chance to contend next year. So I don't really blame them for not getting rid of Danielle Hunter. He's been banged up, and his contract is up. And like, what did Chase Young just fetch? You're going to trade Danielle for a third? Like, that doesn't check out to me. Like, that's not really needle. That doesn't really make me think that that's worth it when he's leading the league in sacks. And I do still think you've got a puncher's chance at the 7 seed, even with horrible quarterback play, because the 7 seed could be so bad.
And maybe I'm just like overthinking and playing hypotheticals too much. But I'm like, This team is overperforming on their offensive line. They're overperforming on their defense. And you're like, well, then next year, like they're not going to be worse. But we said the same thing about the Giants, and they are worse.
Well, the Giants don't have their point differential was bad. The Vikings are going through the same thing that the Giants are going through right now.
The Vikings' point differential was awful last year.
Exactly. The Giants and the Vikings are two different situations in that one, the point differential was really bad and they were overperformed heavily. And the Vikings are still a good roster, but the luck just ran out in terms of losing close games, losing one possession games, fumbles. But the roster still looks quite good. The Giants just suck. The Giants roster isn't as good, man. They don't got a Justin Jefferson or a Jordan Addison or Daniel. I guess they do have a really good player on their defensive line, but I just don't think they have a Darisaw or a Cousins even, or like anything like that. So
yeah,
I don't know. I don't think that the Vikings are going to like regress next year from here. I think they're already going through their regression and kind of, we're fighting for the 7th seed instead of being the 2, So
yeah,
in terms of regressing further, like I don't think they would have. I think they would have gotten better. So I don't think that blowing it up would have been the right move for the Vikings.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Because you could use those players.
You get Kirk back. You get Kirk back next year in Jefferson.
The quarterback situation is going to be interesting with them. Like, I don't think that they're getting the top 2 pick.
No.
And the QB3, like, is it Cousins off a torn Achilles?
We're gonna be digging in the trenches to find the sleeper QB.
The Kyler trade, I guess.
The Kyler trade. Who's gonna be the mid-round quarterback that replaces Kirk Cousins? This is gonna be
certainly a conversation. It's certainly going to be a conversation of what they do. We're giving him a lot of content. I will say this about Rasul Douglas: one sentence. Gambler. Okay, he's a gambler.
Okay. Well, that's one word, not sentence, but okay.
Gambler, comma, he's a gambler. That's what you need to know.
Comma,
he's your best corner currently. So,
all right. I think I've already said all I need to about Donovan Peoples-Jones on TikTok. So it's like he's
probably
threat.
Not too much.
Yeah, he's a deep threat. Same thing, one sentence. He's a deep threat. You got a deep threat. So let's get into the stay hot locks. Theo, who are they brought to you by?
They're brought to you by Underdog Fantasy.
Hey, and the stay hot locks are basically
lost last week, and
Theo lost.
You two won.
Yeah, Theo's the only one that lost. But that's okay, You don't win every single week. It's a very close stay hot locks this year. We've been kind of within 1 point of each other for a pretty good bit for like the past few weeks. So Matt sits at 7 points right now. Theo, you sit at 5 still, and I sit at 6. And
so Matt, where do you want to?
You have the lead.
It depends. Is Kyler playing this week?
No, it's going to be Clayton Tune, I believe.
Oh God.
I'll go 1.
All right.
Oh wait, are they doing their or situation? They're saying Clayton Tune or Kyler Murray.
Oh, see,
that's stupid.
So Matt, you have the first pick here.
And I don't know. This is probably the single worst week I've seen.
It's pretty tough.
It's pretty tough. I'll just pick the Saints to beat the Bears. I'll pick the Saints to beat the Bears. I don't believe Fields is back either, is he?
I don't think so.
That Saints defense is
I don't know if it's officially been said, but I don't think it's like for sure that Fields is it's certainly not for sure that he's back.
Okay, I'll go with them. And then if I'm wrong, then Saints lost and I'm a Panthers fan, and that's great. So,
okay. So then I have the second pick. Yeah, Matt, you're right. This is not a good slate of locks. We're going to be taken some risks here, I feel like, this week. But I feel like I have to take the Browns, trust in their defense a little bit against the Cardinals. So I'm not going to hesitate on that one too much. Theo, I'm not even going to ask. I know you're taking the Raiders with your first pick, and then
That's true.
I did say I'd like the Raiders. I'll stick with it. The old interim, the old interim job. Yeah, betting this week on money lines
it's
to me
wild.
would be quite the experience. Good luck to all you gamblers out there. I'm looking at it and I don't really see anything that looks like a lock in an unpredictable league.
Week.
So yeah, should be a good week, I guess, is what that means. It is a good week. You got Dolphins, Chiefs early in the noon slate. You've got Seahawks,
that's
Ravens.
9:30 a.m. Eastern time.
It's
in
not so
Germany.
bad. Little wake up, little football.
Yeah, wake up and Dolphins, Chiefs is on, and then next
Yeah.
it's Seahawks, Ravens, and then in the next window you have
Dallas,
nothing
Philly.
that is that. Oh yeah, you do have Dallas,
And then
Philly. I didn't even see that.
Cincinnati, Buffalo. It's a lot
That's-
of good games.
You could go from good game to good game to good game to good game next week. So
I will not be leaving my couch, which will be delivered in time for oh no, not this week. It won't be in the no. It doesn't get in until next week. So I won't get to use my couch for this great slate of football.
Brutal.
Terrible.
My couch doesn't come till Tuesday.
they're floating it. They're trying to get the trade winds just right, floating it across the Atlantic from the Sahara, apparently. How long this shit has taken in 2023. Same day shipping exists.
You have to make the couch. I don't know. Like
They don't have to make the couch. They have the couch. They have to get the couch out of like storage
it's velvet.
or whatever.
I don't know what you want me to say, man. Like
Velvet. Sheesh. Maybe they are making the couch. Anyway, let's wrap it up.
Theo, are you gonna take another lock here?
Oh no, I'm gonna go with just ASU
Just the Raiders.
saboteur to beat the Giants.
Fair enough. I'm trying to think about if I want to take anyone else. I don't think I do. Yeah, I think I'm good. Matt,
I'm good.
he won't take anyone else either. So very, very conservative lock picking this week from the Stay Hot crew. And we'll see how it's not even a parlay. It's just like one betting money line this week. Normally it's parlay, but this week it's not. But that's all we have for you on this episode. We'll be back, of course, to recap week 9 of the NFL season. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And until next time, we will catch you on the Flippity Flop.